Today topic is rectus sheath and its contents. It is very, very important 5 marks question. What is a rectus sheath? Rectus sheath is an aponeurotic sheath enclosing the rectus abdominis on either side of the linea alba. That means it is present on either side of the linea alba. That means it is 2 in number. A pair rectus sheath is present in our abdomen. How it is derived? It is derived from the aponeurosis of all the 3 flat muscles of the anterior abdominal wall. What is the function of the rectus sheath? It acts as a retinaculum to prevent the rectus abdominis from bowstringing. And also it maintains the tone of the anterior abdominal wall and also increases the strength of the anterior abdominal wall and also maintains the intra-abdominal pressure. The diagram showing the left RA means rectus abdominis muscle, the RS means rectus sheath. As colon is covered by the so many layers of the skin, in the same way rectus abdominis is covered by the so many layers of the rectus sheath. So mode of formation. Already I told rectus abdominis covered by a rectus sheath. It is formed by the 3 aponeurotic layers of the abdominal muscles. Those are external oblique, internal oblique, transverse abdominis. Among that, internal oblique is divided into or splitting into 2 layers, anterior layer and posterior layer. The first diagram showing the from external to internal 3 muscles, external oblique, internal oblique, transverse abdominis. This internal oblique aponeurosis is divided into 2 layers, anterior layer and posterior layer. The black ones, anterior layer and posterior layer. Remaining 2 external oblique and transverse abdominis doesn't split. So the main principle to remember here is only internal oblique is going to divide it into anterior layer and posterior layer. From where to where? It splits from costal margin to the midpoint between the umbilicus and pubic symphysis. Please remember this point. Internal oblique splits into 2 layers, anterior layer and posterior layer. This splitting extends from costal margin to the midpoint between the umbilicus and pubic symphysis. Above the costal margin and below the midpoint, it doesn't split. So again, I am repeating. The rectus sheath is formed by the 3 aponeurotic layers of the flat abdominal muscles. Among that, only internal oblique going to divide into anterior layer and posterior layer. From where to where? It extends from costal margin to the midpoint between the umbilicus and pubic symphysis. Above the costal margin and below the midpoint, it doesn't split. Next, coming to the boundaries. Till now we discuss about the what is rectus sheath, where it is present, how it is formed, what is the function of the rectus sheath. Now we will going to the deal about the boundaries of the rectus sheath. The first diagram showing the boundaries of the rectus sheath are anterior wall, posterior wall, medial wall, and lateral wall. The first diagram showing the anterior wall, the second diagram showing the posterior wall. So the first diagram showing the anterior wall, second diagram showing the posterior wall. In this, we will see the medial margin or medial wall and lateral wall. The blue dotted line is the medial wall formed by the linea alba. The lateral white dotted line is formed by the linea semilunaris, which forms the lateral wall. So that means the boundaries of the rectus sheath are anterior wall, posterior wall. The blue dotted line medial wall is formed by the linea alba. The white dotted line is formed by the linea semilunaris. We'll discuss about each wall. So coming to the linea alba. What is meant by linea alba? In Latin, the meaning of linea alba is white line. So linea alba is a midline fibrous raphe which extends from xiphoid process to the pubic symphysis. So again, I am repeating. Linea alba is a midline fibrous raphe which extends from the xiphoid process to the pubic symphysis. How it is formed? It is formed by the interlacing of the three aponeurotic layers of the anti-abdominal wall. That means external oblique, internal oblique, and transverse abdominis, three aponeurotic layers interlace and forms the linea alba. How much it measures? It measures about 15 to 22 centimeters. Above the umbilicus, it is wider. Below the umbilicus, it is linear. The important features of the linea alba is it is avascular, no muscular attachments. That's why it is mainly useful for the emergency abdominal surgeries. So again, I am repeating the linea alba. Linea alba is a midline fibrous raphe which extends from the xiphoid process to the pubic symphysis. Above the umbilicus, it is wider. Below the umbilicus, it is narrow. It is measured about 15 to 22 centimeters. It is formed by the interlacing of the three aponeurotic layers of the anti-abdominal wall. It is a avascular. There is no muscular attachments. There is no nerve passing here. That's why it is used for, especially above the umbilicus, it is used for the emergency abdominal surgeries. At the lower end of the linea alba, some fibers comes and attach to the dorsal surface of the body of penis. At the lower end of the linea alba, some fibers come and attach to the dorsal surface of the body of penis and forms a suspensory ligament of penis. So, from lower end of the linea alba, one ligament is formed, which is attached to the body of the dorsal surface of penis is called a suspensory ligament of penis or fundiform ligament of penis. Next, we'll move to the lateral margin or lateral wall, which is formed by the linea semilunaris, otherwise is called as linea spigeli. So, the dotted line in the white figure is the linea semilunaris. It extends from the tip of the ninth costal cartilage to the pubic tubercle. It extends from the tip of the ninth costal cartilage to the pubic tubercle. Here, at linea semilunaris, the intercostal lower six intercostal nerves passes this line and enter into the rectus sheath. That's why it is unwise to give incision here. If incision is given here, the nerves get damaged and nerve supply to the rectus abdominis is lost and leads to the abdominal rectus abdominis paralysis. Again, I am repeating, at the linea semilunaris, lower six intercostal nerves enter into the rectus sheath. That's why it is unwise to give incision at the linea semilunaris. If incision is given here, it leads to the paralysis of the rectus abdominis. And one more is at the linea semilunaris, internal oblique is splits into anterior and posterior lamina. Already I told the next point is lower six intercostal nerve enter into the rectus sheath. And it is also one more important for the transition of the muscular part of the muscles into aponeurotic part. There are three events occurs at the linea semilunaris. One is nerves are entering into the rectus sheath. One is internal oblique splits into anterior and posterior lamina, which extends from costal margin to the midpoint between the umbilicus pubic symphysis. And one more point is the muscular part of the muscles of the anti-abdominal wall are transitioned into or changed into aponeurotic layers. So till now we deal about the medial wall and lateral wall. Next, coming to the important walls are anterior wall and posterior wall. So the left side diagram showing the anterior wall of the rectus sheath, right side diagram showing the posterior wall of the rectus sheath. There are some three features of this wall. So anterior wall is complete. That means it completely covers the anterior surface of the rectus abdominis from upper end to lower end. So anterior wall of the rectus sheath is complete, which covers the anterior surface of the upper end of anterior surface rectus abdominis from upper end to lower end. But posterior wall is incomplete. It only covers the middle part of the posterior surface of the rectus abdominis. This is from the posterior view. This is from the posterior view. Next, coming to second point. So the first feature is anterior wall of the rectus sheath is complete. Posterior wall is incomplete. Next, coming to the second feature. The anterior wall is firmly adhered to the rectus abdominis with some tendinous intersection. So that means the anterior wall of the rectus sheath is tightly adhered to the anterior surface of the rectus abdominis. The posterior wall of the rectus sheath is free from the posterior surface of the rectus abdominis. The second feature is anterior wall of the rectus sheath is tightly adhered to the anterior surface of the abdominis, but posterior wall is opposite. Posterior wall is free from the posterior surface of the rectus abdominis. So here anterior wall and posterior wall we'll discuss at 3 levels. So first we'll see how we'll divide the 3 levels. The first level is above the costal margin. The second level is from costal margin to the midpoint between the umbilicus and pubic symphysis. And third level is below the midpoint. So again I'm repeating, we'll deal anterior wall and posterior wall with the help of 3 levels. The first level is, our upper level is above the costal margin. The middle level is between the costal margin and midpoint between the umbilicus and pubic symphysis. The third level is below the midpoint. So first we'll deal about the anterior wall. Above the costal margin, the anterior wall is formed by the only aponeurotic layer of external oblique. So above the costal margin, the anterior wall is formed only by the aponeurotic layer of the external oblique. Next, coming to the middle level, that is between the costal margin to below the costal margin to the midpoint between the umbilicus and pubic symphysis. Here it is formed by the fusion of aponeurotic layer of the external oblique and anterior lamina of the internal oblique. Already I told at the middle level, internal oblique is divided into anterior lamina and posterior lamina. Here this anterior lamina forms the anterior wall at the middle level. So at middle level, the anterior wall is formed by the 2 aponeurotic layers. Those are, one is fusion of the external oblique aponeurotic layer and one is anterior lamina of the internal oblique. That means 2 aponeurotic layers are involved here. Then below the midpoint between the umbilicus and symphysis pubis is formed by all 3 aponeurotic layers of the flat muscles of the abdomen. That is aponeurotic layers of external oblique, internal oblique and transverse abdominis. So again I am repeating, above the costal margin is formed by only one aponeurotic layer, that is the external oblique aponeurotic layer. That's why here anterior wall is thin. Next, coming to the middle. Middle is formed by the fusion of 2. The middle level is formed by the fusion of 2 aponeurotic layers of the abdominal wall. Those are external oblique and anterior lamina of internal oblique. That's why here it is somewhat thicker compared to the upper level. And lower layer is formed by all the fusion of the 3 aponeurotic layers of the abdomen. Those are external oblique, internal oblique and transverse abdominis. That's why here is anterior wall is very thickest. So above the costal margin, anterior wall is thin. At middle level it is thicker and below the midpoint is very thickest and toughest. So this is the formation of the anterior wall at the different levels. Coming to the posterior wall. Already I told above and below, above costal margin and below the midpoint, the internal oblique doesn't split. That means posterior wall is deficit above the costal margin and below the midpoint. So coming to the above level. So already I told above the costal margin, the posterior wall or internal oblique is deficit. That's why the rectus abdominis is directly live over the 5th, 6th, 7th costal cartilages. Above the costal margin, the posterior wall is deficit. Number 1 point. That's why rectus abdominis is directly lies over the 5th, 6th, 7th costal cartilage. That is the first one. Coming to the middle level. So middle level is formed by the fusion of posterior lamina of the internal oblique and transverse abdominis aponeurotic layer. So here the middle level is formed by the fusion of 2 aponeurotic layers. Those are, one is posterior lamina of the internal oblique and transverse abdominis. So that means at middle level the posterior wall is formed by the fusion of 2 aponeurotic layers. And below the midpoint it is deficit. So it is directly live over the fascia transversalis. So that means posterior wall is only present at the middle level, not the above costal margin, not the below costal margin. Above the costal margin, the rectus abdominis is directly live over the costal cartilages. Below the midpoint, it live over the fascia transversalis. Only posterior wall is formed at the mid level by the fusion of the posterior lamina of the internal oblique and transverse abdominis. And one more point is, The posterior wall at the lower end, that means at the midpoint, ends as a one short concave sickle-shaped margin is called as arcade line of Douglas. Again, I am repeating, at the lower end of the at the lower end of the posterior wall of the rectus sheath, it ends as a sickle-shaped concave margin at the midpoint between the umbilicus and pubic symphysis. That is called as arcade line of Douglas or linea semicircularis. This linea alba, linea semilunaris, arcade line are very, very important for bits and also for 2 marks or 5 marks questions. So this is the table showing the anterior wall and posterior wall difference at the different levels. So just I am fastly repeating. Above the costal margin, anterior wall is formed by the external oblique aponeurosis. Between at middle level is formed by the fusion of the external oblique and antilamina of the internal oblique. And below the midpoint is formed by the external oblique, internal oblique, and transverse abdominis. That's why thin, thicker, and thickest. The posterior wall is above and below the midpoint is deficit. Above it is lies over the 3 costal cartilage. Below it lies over the fascia transversalis. Mid level it is formed by the fusion of the posterior lamina of the internal oblique and transverse abdominis. So this is a diagram showing at the mid level. So the anterior wall is formed by the fusion of external oblique. So the anterior level is formed by the fusion of the external oblique and anterior lamina of the internal oblique. The posterior wall is formed by the fusion of posterior lamina of the internal oblique and transverse abdominis. This is the diagram below the midpoint. So that means it is formed entirely, anterior wall is entirely formed by the 3 walls of the 3 aponeurotic layers of the flat muscles. Those are external oblique, internal oblique, and transverse abdominis. External oblique, internal oblique, and transverse abdominis. These 3 combine to form the anterior wall. The posterior wall is formed only by the fascia transversalis. So already I told about the arcuate line of Douglas or linea semicircularis. The posterior wall of the rectus sheath at the midpoint of the umbilicus and pubic symphysis ends at a concave margin. This red one is the concave margin, is nothing but the arcuate line. So why it is so important? Over this arcuate line, the blood vessels runs. Over this arcuate line, the blood vessels, especially inferior epigastric artery and veins runs. And also one more point is the junction of arcuate line and linea semilunaris. This area is a weak area. That means it leads to the hernia. So I will tell what is about hernia, everything. Just remember the junction of arcuate line and linea semilunaris. This area is weak line. So 2 important things of arcuate line are, one important is the blood vessels runs over it, and one more is at the junction of arcuate and linea semilunaris, this junction area is weak area. So till now we'll deal about the introduction of the rectus sheath, what is its definition, how it is formed. Next is what are the boundaries. Anterior wall, how it is formed, posterior wall, how it is formed, medial wall, how it is formed, and lateral wall, how it is formed. Next we'll move to the contents of the rectus sheath. So the 2 muscles, important muscles present in the rectus sheath are rectus abdominis and pyramidalis, and 2 vessels. Those are superior epigastric vessels and inferior epigastric vessels. That is both artery and veins. And 6 nerves. Those are lower 6 thoracic nerves. That means lower 5 intercostal nerve and 1 subcostal nerve. These are the contents of the rectus sheath. We will deal about each content. So first coming to the rectus abdominis. This is the major content of the rectus sheath. So it has 2 heads, medial head and lateral head. Medial head arises from the pubic symphysis and lateral head arises from the pubic tubercle. After origin, these fibers run upwards and inserted to the xiphoid process and 5th, 6th, 7th costal cartilages. So again I am repeating, rectus abdominis is the major vertical strap muscles of the abdomen. It is a major content of the rectus sheath. It has 2 origins, medial head and lateral head. Medial head arises from the pubic symphysis and lateral head arises from the pubic crest and tubercle. The fibers runs upwards and inserted to the xiphoid process, 5th, 6th, 7th costal cartilages. So this diagram showing the origin and insertion. This long vertical muscle is divided into small muscular segments with the help of tendinous intersection. You people able to see the blue dotted lines focusing, those are white ones. Those are nothing but the tendinous intersections. What is this tendinous intersections? These are nothing but the fibrous lines which run horizontally in zigzag manner and divides the muscle into small muscular segments. Tendinous intersection in some books it's compared with the lumbar or abdominal ribs. Generally, ribs are present in only thoracic region, but these tendinous intersections are compared as lumbar or abdominal ribs. So where it is present? Generally, only three tendinous intersections are present. Only three tendinous intersections are present. One at the zipper process, one at the umbilicus, and one is in between that. In this diagram, we also have one more that is below the umbilicus. So again, I am repeating tendinous intersections. Tendinous intersections are nothing but white fibrous line which divide the long vertical muscle into smaller muscular segments. These are nothing but fibrous lines move in a horizontal manner. It have a zigzag pattern. So where it is present, generally three are present. Those are, one is at ziphoid process, tip of the ziphoid process, one is at the umbilicus, and one more at between these two. Generally only 99%, only three only present. In some cases, one more will be present below the umbilicus. Why this tendinous intersections should be there? Because presence of these tendinous intersection, the muscle is divided into small, shorter segments. Because of this, the power and strength of the muscle is increased during contraction. So what is the function of this tendinous intersection? It increases the power and strength of this rectus abdominis muscle during its contraction. So what is the nerve supply? So it gets already, I told that the linea semilunaris, the lower six in thoracic nerves enter into the rectus sheath. So this intercostal nerve supplies the rectus abdominis. So it runs from lateral to medial. That's why during surgeries, we'll retract the muscle medial to laterally to avoid the injury to the nerves. So the nerves enter from lateral to medial. That's why during surgeries, what we have to do? We have to retract the muscle from medial to lateral to avoid the injuries to prevent rectus abdominis paralysis. What is the action of this rectus abdominis? It protects abdominal viscera from blunt injury, helpful for the flexion of the vertebral column and maintain the intra-abdominal pressure, especially during the expulsive acts, during coughing, during straining for the stools. During that time, it is helpful for the protection of the and maintenance of the intra-abdominal pressure. So what is the rectus abdominis? Where is it is present? What are the origin, insertion, function, nerve supply? What is the tendinous intersection? So because of this tendinous intersection, all you know the fascinating six-pack, eight-pack, these are occurred because of due to presence of those tendinous intersections. Next, coming to the small muscle is pyramidalis muscle. It is a triangular muscle. Generally, it is absent or degenerated in human beings. Its origin from pubic tubercle or pubic symphysis runs upwards medially and inserted to the linea alba. The white dotted one is showing the pyramidalis muscle. So, pyramidalis muscle is the triangular, smaller muscle generally degenerated in human beings. It originates from the pubic symphysis and pubic crest, runs upwards medially inserted to the linea alba. It's no supply from subcostal nerve and action is tensor of the linea alba, helpful for the contraction of the linea alba at the lower level. So the major contents are over, rectus abdominis and pyramidalis. Next we'll move to the vessels content. So first is superior epigastric artery. Already you people know that superior epigastric artery is the terminal branch of the internal thoracic artery. So it is one of the terminal branch of the internal thoracic artery. So one more branch is musculophrenic artery. So this internal thoracic artery enter into the rectus sheath between the triangular gap present between the xiphoid process and costal cartilage and enter into the rectus sheath within the and gives the muscular branches to the rectus abdominis. And also here it gives some muscular branches to the rectus abdominis, anastomotic branches to the inferior epigastric artery. Here it anastomoses the inferior epigastric artery at the umbilicus level. And one more thing is this anastomosis occurred within the rectus abdominis muscle. So again I am repeating, superior epigastric artery is a terminal branch of internal thoracic artery. It enters into the rectus sheath between a triangular gap present in the diaphragm between the sternal fibers and costal fibers of the diaphragm. Then it enters into the rectus sheath and gives muscular branches to the rectus abdominis and also anastomotic branches to the inferior epigastric artery. This anastomosis occurred within the rectus abdominis muscle at umbilicus level and helpful for the collateral circulation between the upper limb and lower limb. Next, we'll move to the inferior epigastric artery. So, inferior epigastric artery, already I told. Inferior epigastric artery is one of the branch of external iliac artery. So, it runs over the, it runs between the extraperitoneal tissue and fascia transversalis and pierces the fascia transversalis and enter into the rectus sheath and runs over the arcuate line of Douglas. So again I am repeating, inferior epigastric artery is one of the branch of external iliac artery. It pierces the fascia transversalis and enter into the rectus sheath and runs over the arcuate line. Runs over the arcuate line and anastomosis with the superior epigastric artery at the level of the umbilicus within the rectus abdominis muscle. So only 2 points you people have to remember here is anastomosis occur within the rectus abdominis muscle at the level of umbilicus. And one more important point is this inferior epigastric artery, here it gives for 2 more branches. One is cremastic branch to the cremaster muscle. One is pubic branch, which anastomoses with the pubic branch of obturator artery. Sometimes this pubic branch is formed as an obturator artery if in case obturator artery is absent. So again I am repeating, inferior epigastric artery gives some muscular branches, cutaneous branches, anastomotic branches like that. Along with these 2 more branches, one is cremastic branch for cremastic muscle and pubic branch to anastomose the pubic branch of obturator artery. Sometimes if pubic obturator artery is absent, that means obturator artery from branch from internal iliac artery. If some case it is absent, this pubic branch continues as obturator artery. Next we'll move to the superior epigastric vein and inferior epigastric vein. It's nothing, it's simple very. So superior epigastric veins are vena competens. A pair of veins are present on either side of the superior epigastric. They run upwards and drain into the internal thoracic or internal mammary artery. So superior epigastric veins are vena competens 2 in number, runs upwards and drains into the internal thoracic artery. In the same way, inferior epigastric veins are vena competens 2 in number, comes downwards and drains into the external iliac vein. External iliac vein. This is internal thoracic or internal mammary vein, and this is the external iliac vein. Next, coming to the nerves. So already I told at the linea semilunaris, these all 6 nerves, lower 6 thoracic nerves, pierce the linea semilunaris. Where these nerves are present, they are present between the internal oblique and transverse abdominis muscle. That is the neuromuscular. So between the internal oblique and transverse abdominis, these nerves comes at the linea semilunaris, pierce the rectus sheath and enter into the posterior wall of the rectus sheath and supplies the muscular branches, gives muscular branches to the rectus abdominis and pierce the rectus abdominis and anterior wall of the rectus sheath and terminates as cutaneous nerves. So simple. First is pierce the linea semilunaris, then it pierces the posterior surface of the rectus abdominis and supplies the rectus abdominis muscle, and then pierces forwards the anterior wall of the rectus abdominis sheath and comes out as terminates as anterior lateral cutaneous nerves. So the anatomical part is completed. The main contents are 2 muscles, rectus abdominis and pyramidalis. The 2 important vessels are superior epigastric artery and inferior epigastric artery and their corresponding veins, and important lower 6 thoracic nerves. Among them, 5 are intercostal nerves and 1 is subcostal nerve. Coming to the clinical anatomy. The first clinical anatomy is pedicle of. So here in this diagram showing the pedicle of the rectus abdominis is used for the breast reconstructive surgery along with superior epigastric artery. These two diagrams showing the breast reconstructive surgery with the help of the rectus abdominis. This is the first applied anatomy. Next, we'll move to the second one, that is divarication of the recta, separation of the recti. When this happens, this is a normal one. This is the separation of the recti muscle. When will happen? What are the causes? It is happened when during the pregnancy and during the multiple elderly women or the patients who are obese or chronic constipated patients. So while they are straining, it leads to the separation of the two recti muscles. Then here linea alba becomes very thin. So that's why the abdominal content, abdominal viscera in the abdomen comes out while flexion. So when is divarication of subrecti is occurred? It occurred during the pregnancy, obesity or multiparous elderly women. So what are the possible causes are? When the abdomen has fat, feces, fetus, flatus and fluid. In that time what will happen? The two recti muscles due to the straining, the two muscles become separated and the linea alba which is present become thinned out and leads to the midline bulge. So to prevent this, how to use abdominal belt. So next coming to the third apply. Next coming to the third one is hematoma of the rectal sheath. Already I told the superior epigastric artery and inferior epigastric artery are anastomosis within the rectus abdominis muscle. So during pregnancy or later months of the pregnancy or during gun trauma lead to the hemorrhage. This is the diagram showing the hematoma of those arteries. How it is present, midline abdominal pain is present and tender mass is confined to only one rectus sheath. So this is the hematoma due to the hemorrhage to the superior epigastric and inferior epigastric. Next coming to the hernias related to this rectus sheath. So what is a hernia? Hernia is abnormal protrusion of the normal viscera through the abnormal openings. So abnormal protrusion of normal viscera through abnormal openings. For example, epigastric hernia, umbilical hernia, spicelian hernia, incisional hernia. We will see some. So what is epigastric hernia? So already I told during pregnancy or elderly multiparous women or obese patients, what will happen? The abdominal muscles become weak and recti muscles are separate and linea alba becomes thin. That's why during any overstraining leads to the abdominal viscera comes out. This is the diagram showing the epigastric hernia. These are the diagram showing the epigastric hernia. Especially supraumbilical region is very common for epigastric hernia. Next one is spicelian hernia. Already I told at the junction of arcade line and linea semilunar is the weak point. During any weak of this aponeurotic layer leads to the spicelian hernia. Next, incisional hernia. Incisional hernia is very common about the umbilicus because here already I told the linea alba is avascular and generally the abdominal surgeries are done here because it is avascular, no nerves and no muscular attachment. There is drawback is it is linea alba is avascular, that the healing becomes late and leads to the incisional hernia. So, incisional hernia is common above the umbilical region because linea alba is avascular. Next, this linea below the umbilicus, this linea alba and linea semilunaris are the sites for the paracentesis of aspiration of the peritoneal fluid. Just like we will draw the pleural fluid of the thorax, pleural fluid of the pleura. In the same way, paracentesis of the abdominal fluid also done with the help of this linea alba and linea semilunaris below the umbilicus. Next, what are the incisions related to this rectus sheath are? Already I told midline incisions are very suitable for emergency surgeries because it is almost bloodless, no muscle fibers, no nerves are injured. It gives access to both sides of the abdomen. So we can go right side or left side. The disadvantages are healing late and leads to the incisional hernia. So we'll see some of the incisions. The first diagram, left side A diagram showing the midline incision. That means it passes through the linea alba. So it is done, I told it's done in the emergency surgeries. Next is paramedian. So this is the midline. From there, 2.5 centimeters laterally will view paramedian. We incise the anterior wall of the rectus sheath. We'll retract the abdomen from rectus abdomen, so medial to laterally. We'll cut the posterior wall and do the surgery and complete the surgery. So this is a paramedian, just 2.5 centimeters lateral to the midline. Next is pararectal. This is lateral to the rectus abdominis muscle. This is the diagram C is showing the pararectal. Then is midrectal. That is the middle level of the rectus abdominis muscle. And one more is transverse incision. Below the umbilicus or above umbilicus we can give, but below umbilicus transverse incision is very common. That is fennel steel incision. Generally it is used for the uterus surgeries and ovarian surgeries. Okay, girls. Girls. Hello, girls.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, the gist of the, keep quiet. The gist of the class is, what is the rectus abdominis, rectus sheath? What is its definition? Where it is present? How it is formed? What are the boundaries? Medial, lateral, anterior, and posterior wall. How anterior wall and posterior wall different at different levels? What are the contents of the rectus sheath and the rectus abdominal pyramidalis vessels? And what is upright? Generally, the upright is breast reconstructive surgery, divercation of the recti, and hernias and incision. The key point should be remembered is internal oblique is divided into anterior lamina and posterior lamina between the costal margin and midpoint of the umbilicus and pubic symphysis. One more is posterior wall is deficit above the costal margin and below the midpoint. The blood vessels runs within